Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. The good thing, as I've said before about YouTube, is that you can listen to it as a podcast in your car if you prefer. In this section, I chat to professionals who've made a difference to the lives of children, students, and adults who are neurodivergent. The students may also have physical disabilities, and today you have the opportunity to listen to Rosalie Seymour from South Africa. As a speech and language therapist and audiologist from South Africa, Rosalie Seymour has spent most of her working career in the field of neurodiversity. She has travelled to many countries to study alternative approaches, and she's compiled a desk directory of the information she collected, and that's entitled Autism Option Galore's 2006 Directory for Parents. And this is available through Amazon. Rosalie has developed a whole person intervention approach to neurodiversity called neurocognitive mobilization, which organizes current approaches in a cohesive framework that allows parents and professionals to make sense of the myriad and often divergent therapy options that are on offer. This can be obtained by contacting Rosalie directly at ncm4kids@gmail.com. Now, there will be a transcript with this YouTube video, so you can find that on the transcript later if you didn't have time then to copy that down. She's spoken at many conferences in various countries across the world, and she runs training courses online and in person to teach this approach to parents and professionals alike. Rosalie was the first person in Africa to receive training by Dr. Guy Barrard when he introduced a breakthrough approach called auditory integration training. She was appointed by him as an international trainer for practitioners. She wrote the training manual that's now used worldwide, and she developed an improved device for doing AIT called the e-educator. She went on to create an at-home AIT system to make it easier and less expensive to obtain the training. This system is known as Filtered Sound Training, FST, and is established in many countries. In fact, that's how I got to know Rosalie, when she trained me in FST, so that I was able to offer it to students in my school. Hello, Rosalie, and welcome.
It's a privilege to be here, Angie. Thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with your listeners.
Let's get straight into questions, as I believe we've a lot of interesting things to cover. You trained for your dual degree at the University of Pretoria in South Africa in 1971. Can you explain to us why you felt a dual degree was useful for a speech and language therapist?
Yes, certainly. At the time, the course included dual certification as speech and language and audiology. And it turned out to be a great advantage because the issues of hearing relate very closely to the issues of listening and learning. Another benefit I received then was to understand the absolute need to find the underlying causes of developmental problems in order to make better progress in therapy.
I know that the Tomatis, Tomatis method influenced you. Can you tell the listeners why?
Yes, it was probably the biggest mind-opening experience that I'd had when a friend brought me information about a professor at Potchefstroom University here who was doing this Tomatis approach of auditory stimulation for stuttering. And this professor, Christy Roeder was his name, he agreed to meet with my friend and me, and he spent hours explaining to us the connections, how hearing works, using sound to correct what had gone wrong. It was revolutionary. Our course was not training us in this way. We were not hearing these facts in our faculty, but it made so much sense. It took sound out of the limited domain of hearing versus deafness and explained the impact of sound on the entire brain and body. I was captivated.
I understand that you even translated his book, Tomatis's book, from French to English because you felt so passionate about his methods. Yet your profession didn't agree. How did that affect you?
My profession decided to block this concept, to label Tomatis as a charlatan, and refused any further contact with these notions. But by this time, though, I was a graduate and working in Cape Town. I was convinced that his work was too significant to ignore. It could make changes for these children by taking on board this new approach. And if that was so, it had to be done. I felt we owed it to our clients.
Did you train in this method, Rosalie?
Well, in 1972, Dr. Tomatis visited Stellenbosch University, which is close by, to present his ideas. And I was asked to assist with interpreting, as he didn't speak English, and definitely not Afrikaans at the time. I received there an invitation from him to train in his method. I realized that, though, that this was a turning point for me. Things would never be the same again after I'd come back from the training. I would have to dedicate my life to teaching this method. But at the time, I was engaged to be married, and I chose marriage over this training. However, this nagging sense remained, since I always felt we were not doing the very best there was for our clients.
Your first position as a speech and language therapist, Rosalie?
In 1973, I took a position at the newly created Behaviour School for Autism. At the time, the refrigerator mother theory was popular, and we did what we could to entice speech out of the kids, but there was so very much that we did not know to do. In those days, it was either medication and emotional support, and maybe a bit of education if you could. I left the school then to start my own family. And when I returned to work 10 years later, quite a lot had changed. Bettelheim and his refrigerator mother theory, well, he'd been debunked. And the approach to autism teaching now was to use a dumbed down, simplified curriculum and therapies like occupational, speech, psychology, art therapy, horse riding, and so on. But progress was still poor.
Can you remember when you first heard about Dr. Guy Berard, Rosalie?
Well, it happened that a parent at the school handed me the Reader's Digest condensed book entitled Fighting for Georgie, in which Annabelle Staley, the mom, wrote of her daughter Georgie's amazing breakthrough progress out of autism after receiving auditory therapy from Dr. Guy Berard in France. I read the story and I recognized the basis of the Tomatis method there, but I wanted to know more. And then, by an absolute fluke of chance, the teacher sitting right next to me in the staff room had just received the original book from her daughter. And I saw it in her bag and I said, wow, I'd like to read that. This book, The Sound of a Miracle by Annabelle Staley, had fallen into my lap. I read it, well, almost at one sitting. It's so well written and engrossing. And this book is available through Amazon still. Just want to mention that. It's a very good read.
Yes, I've read it.
Yes, yes. Well, then here I saw a new variation of the auditory approach using music. but different. For example, not 100 hours as the Tomatis method was at that time, but 10 hours with substantial progress after even just the one set of 10 hour sessions, not repeated rounds of 100 hours 4 times a year, continuing as deemed necessary, that were bankrupting parents at the time. Originally, Tomatis was that, as I've said, 100 hours, just going on and on and on. They have changed their protocol of late. We think in the Berard approach, because they've seen the success of fewer hours and, in the Berard method. But I was ignited when I read this story. I believe that we had to have this for our pupils. And so I tried to talk the principal, the committee, fundraisers, the professionals into funding a trip to an upcoming conference in Toronto, Canada, to hear firsthand about the auditory integration training, the Berard approach. But nobody came forward. However, the more I spoke about it, I just became more and more passionate about it. And I became completely, I went a little over the top, and I must say, I went to the bank manager and I got a loan. I'm everlastingly grateful to that manager. Thank you.
Wow, you obviously felt that these methods could change lives. What did you do in Canada apart from attend the conference?
Well, after the autism conference, as the conference finished, I met with a speaker, Dr. Binet, and he used to offer both the Tomatis and the Berard methods. So I felt he could answer my questions, and he was very encouraging and helpful. So immediately after the conference, I took a midnight bus to New York, and then I went on by train to Westport, Connecticut, and spent an hour or so with Peter and Annabelle Staley, who wrote the authors of that book. They graciously gave me hours of their time. And it was, in fact, sitting in their office, listening to the phone calls from parents coming in as they reported the dramatic changes that their children were experiencing after 10 days with AIT, the Berard method, that I was convinced. I could see that this was not a fantasy, this was the real deal, and just so convinced that we needed to have it in South Africa.
I can imagine you doing all of that, Rosalie, knowing you as I know you now. What did you do on your return to South Africa?
Fundraising. Once again, there was absolutely zero interest from the powers that be, the committee, the professionals. So my husband and I took a bond loan on the house, bless him, and off I went to be trained. It was wonderful because in 4 days I went from committed but confused to understanding the solid scientific basis for AIT. And I knew that we could finally do something of value for people with autism and related conditions. I met Georgie herself, who can no longer be labeled autistic. I heard many reports of massive changes seen by various professionals who were attending the course.
What did you do then when you arrived back in South Africa after the training?
I had decided that by that time to open in private practice, since the School for Autism wouldn't let me do the AIT there, nor the School for the Dyslexic Children. But parents wanted this, so they flocked for the treatment, and the demand was there. And good results started to come in. Wonderful stories of progress, some very big, but some only small, but no negatives and only positive outcomes, with better speech, better focus, memory, awareness, even improved handwriting and coordination.
How many people have you helped then through AIT over the years, do you think, Rosalie?
It's hard to say, but I have definitely directly done more than 3,000 people, adults, children, which makes what I report, the results that I report, puts it in the league of more than just anecdotal evidence. I've worked with it in South Africa, in Ireland, in the UK, in Hungary, Indonesia, and even in Fiji for a client. I was certificated by Dr. Berard as an international practitioner trainer.
I understand Berard approved of a device that you had built in Cape Town to do AIT.
Yes, we called it the Earducator, and he approved it shortly before he passed away.
I remember the first time I met you, actually, Rosalie. It was at his tribute conference in London that you organised, where I heard about FST, filtered sound training. And can you explain why you created the filtered sound training when you already had the auditory integration training?
Well, I realized we needed a device that was less expensive. Right. We also needed a device that, if something went wrong, could be easily repaired on our soil without sending it back to France. And, you know, it would have been a disaster. So I've gone ahead, though, and understood that we could do it even more cheaply than with the Earducator if we were to use the computer with its abilities and we had a well-written app that if we could do AIT more cheaply and we could do it in people's homes, because just about everyone at that point had a laptop. So that they didn't have to travel great distances for these 2 sessions a day for 10 days. This program was written for me as I worked in Ireland, in Waterford. It's available all around the world. It goes by the name of Filtered Sound Training to differentiate it from the AIT using the big, heavy, cumbersome devices. But it remains, it is still Berard AIT in its protocol, the way it works, the way the sound comes out of the device, and in the positive outcomes.
Yes, we had positive outcomes for the students who needed it in our school, for those who had auditory issues that affected their learning. We provided evidence on our school website. We actually went to conferences and used our research at the conferences worldwide. Yet I understand that there are still those that question its effectiveness, even though it's been proved across the world.
That is very, very hard to explain. The profession of audiology and speech language inexplicably continues to close their minds to this very useful treatment. They claim it is unscientific, despite the substantial body of research that's been published and has been done and has been reported, and that supports what we claim and that we see, parents support report that they see after AIT. The results are freely available via the internet to be read by anyone interested to know the facts and who not just blocking their mind.
Can we talk then, Rosalie, about auditory processing problems and how that can affect students?
It's really little known. We don't think about the impact of auditory processing nearly enough. Some students with auditory processing issues may have problems learning phonics and spelling. Some children act as if deaf, but testing shows no deafness. And these children struggle to connect with sound in general in their environment and to make sense of it. Some are troubled by sound so badly that they cover their ears to try to get away from ordinary everyday sounds. These are children who cannot learn from what they hear said and just what they hear in general. This difficulty has developmental, academic, social, and emotional impacts on the child's life and well-being.
So how does the filtering process of AIT, FST, how does that help?
It takes the music and it filters the whole sound parcel into low frequency and high frequency portions. And these filtered portions are then sent via headphones to the listener in an alternating random pattern, which is unpredictable. So being unpredictable, the brain cannot block it or ignore it. It can't get used to it. Therefore, for 30 minutes, twice a day, for 10 days straight, the listener has their auditory system energetically exercised. And in this way, the whole ear-brain system is brought to a level of more efficient working. Hence, the many and varied positive changes seen after the 10 days of AIT or FST. And research is more and more indicating that brain potentials improve after AIT, FST in both hemispheres.
I understand that Barad developed AIT to treat his own loss of hearing.
Yes, that was how it started. But he soon saw that there was a benefit to students who were neurodiverse. And this is because these students all have some difficulties with listening skills and auditory processing problems and sensory integration difficulties. We know it, Ange, we see it.
Very true. Can these auditory training programs be used at any age? Because sometimes we have adults who come to this channel who spent a lifetime with these particular difficulties. So can they be helped through AIT and FST?
Yes, we know today that the brain's plasticity exists from cradle to grave. It never stops. Of course, it's easier for the younger, but it never stops. And radical improvements in cognitive functioning can occur at any age. As one of the many therapies and technologies available today, both AIT and FST can alleviate sensory processing issues for students young and old, and help some students to make radical improvements in their cognitive functions. And may I just tell you too, that even people without difficulties after AIT it boosts their performance.
Yes, very true, very true. I agree it's suitable for some students, and there is always an assessment beforehand that comes with the FST to determine whether or not it's suitable. And tests are done before and after to demonstrate progress, if there is any. That's still correct, is it not?
Yes, that is. Although we don't want to err on the side of making so much assessment and too little intervention.
Yeah.
To find out more, you've given the details of the website, which is www.filteredsoundtraining.net, or contact me. May I say NCM, the number 4, the word kids, as I always say, many baby goats, at gmail.com. NCM for kids at gmail.com.
Thank you, Rosalie. It's been an honour and a pleasure to chat with you today. You have such passion for your work, and you've made a positive difference to innumerable lives throughout the world.
Well, thank you, Ange. And I want to thank you for all you do to improve the situation for learners of all ages.
Thank you. Viewers and listeners, if you've enjoyed listening to this channel today, then please subscribe to know when I get to chat to another educational professional dedicated to inspiring individuals that they work with. And please give a thumbs up if you've enjoyed listening to Rosalie today. If you follow the transcript that will come with the YouTube, you will find links that Rosalie has talked about that you may wish to follow. But thank you all very much for listening today. And we do hope, both Rosalie and myself, I'm sure, we do hope that you have benefited from listening to this channel today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.